Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. And this was one of my most hyped for the year, even though I didn't know this one was coming out this year. So today I am reviewing Two Like the Lightning by Travis Beaudoin. This is an age gap MLM romance all about a former college professor whose life is kind of in shambles and goes to this tiny Floridian town to recoup and ends up having a spark with the local landscaper. And I believe that reviewers should always reveal the biases they have so that the viewer can get a full picture of their reading experience. So in honor of full transparency, I was really predisposed to like this book for like 2 years now. Time means nothing. Travis Beaudoin as a person has actually been very influential for me even outside of both this book and the other work of his that I have reviewed. I consider him my point of contact into the queer men writing MLM stories sphere, community, area of Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I was really struggling to get into that community of indie writers, and he randomly came across my Twitter page one day. We struck up a conversation and he gave me like 16 names. He's also sent, like, directly given my name to other queer men writing MLM. So either directly or indirectly, a lot of the work I've done with queer men in this space is because of him. And I have reviewed his short story series, Bryce Can Play, which was erotica, and I loved it. And I was saying, even back then, I want to see a full novel. And I didn't know this one was coming out soon, but the minute he said, oh, by the way, I was like, yes. Like, I was reading a different book, paused to check my social media real quick, saw the message from him on Twitter that the arc was ready, and I'm like, well, I'm not reading that book anymore. So I was very hyped for this one, and it did not disappoint. Now, it does help that this book has a very much more hopeful tenor than a lot of the very dark queer books I have on my review list right now. Andrew is a former college professor. He taught English, just like Bryce, and he lost the contract. The contract didn't get renewed. It wasn't anything he did. Someone else beat him out for tenure, and his job fell apart. And when the job fell apart, his relationship with his boyfriend, who was also working at the same college, and I think was technically his boss, fell apart as well. And so he takes the offer of his bestest friend to go and live in her and her husband's vacation home in Florida for the summer to try and get everything back together, finish writing his book, find a new job, all of that good stuff. But he's very depressed, very melancholic, and in that way very much not like the protagonist of that short story series. He's very nihilistic, very self-doubting, but also loves thinking and loves literature and theater. Well, you have this 20-year-old named Coley who has to come around and help with the landscaping after his dad, who was working in the landscaping for the couple that owns the home, had an accident. And wouldn't you know, sparks begin to fly. And Coley is definitely a very young Apollo-like character, blonde-haired and tanned and full of youthful vigor and infectious smiles. Thankfully, he was not a totally flat character. He has some depth that you see over the course of the story, but at first it definitely felt like a little bit of a flat character, although that was probably more because of Andrew's estimation of him and his very big crush. And it was really funny to look at Andrew crushing on Coley and be like, I wish I could do something about it, but it's forbidden, because he assumes that Coley must be straight and he's not going to bring up his sexuality because this is a very, very tiny town in, southern Florida. It's like valid. But it's really funny because like Coley's queer. Like the whole time, this is an MLM romance. Like, this has a happy ending, guys. I don't know if you know that. That's not a spoiler. It's a capital R romance. So the realization that Coley is queer, I believe gay. I do not believe he expresses any interest in women or anyone beyond men in this story, at least. And it was a very cool moment. Now, I did say this is an age gap romance. Thankfully, no one is underage. And while there might be slight overtones of professor-student dynamic in that Andrew loves monologuing about plays. It's not an actual professor-student relationship. However, I would not caution, but give a heads up to anyone that would go into this book expecting the stereotypical power, I guess, dynamic from this age gap romance, because when it comes to the steamy scenes, Andrew's not in charge. Andrew is not in charge of the steamy scenes at all. It is 100% Coley. So if you are of the age gap because the older person is the dominant one dynamic, that is not here. Andrew is very much swept away by Coley, and it's adorable, actually. And the age gap, 20 to Andrew turns 34 over the course of the novel, wasn't too bad. I mean, granted, it helped that Coley, again, was a full-grown adult that had already had other sexual encounters before Andrew, so there was no themes of grooming, no themes of underage anything. That helped a lot, because I'm not normally the most age gap loving person in romance, but I really did like that. And again, the power dynamics in the steamy scenes being so reversed really helped sell it that this was not someone taking advantage of someone else. Now, the steamy scenes in themselves were highly cinematic, like incredibly cinematic, which I was not expecting. There are, like, you know, scenes involving torrential storms and rains happening, you know, while on the porch, and there's another scene with, you know, they're laying in a truck bed and there's fireworks. Like, it was very highly cinematized in those scenes, and it was very vivid. The descriptions of a lot of this were very, very vivid. The setting of the natural space around the house is a character in itself. And it helps, of course, that Coley is a landscaper and they spend a lot of time outside, but just the descriptions of the greenery and the pond and the constant explanations or constant descriptions of the heat and its effect on Andrew, because Andrew's not used to it. Like, it was very placey, despite the fact that it almost felt like the house was the only place. Like, he goes other places, specifically in, like, the last half to last third of the book, but a good chunk of it, like, I think, like, up to 100 pages, was literally just these two men in this house and the area surrounding the house. And it almost felt like a play, which felt very appropriate, because there's a lot of talk about playwrights and plays in this book. The title of it itself is a quote from Juliet, from Romeo and Juliet. The reference was basically that something being too much like lightning, gone before you can even notice it. It references the fact that both of them believe that this is a temporary thing. Andrew's going to go back to doing whatever he sets his eyes to in the fall, and it kind of gives us slightly melancholic, fleeting romance vibes to it. And it again made it much more vivid. And in general, I just loved the vibes. It has very good, impeccable summer romance vibes. Queer summer romance vibes. Which makes me laugh because this is coming out March 4th. So if you're really missing summertime vibes right now, I have a book for you. But like I mentioned before, the hopeful aspects of this were really, really nice for me and where I'm at right now and what the rest of my review list looks like, because after this one, I'm going to be going back to reading dystopias. So having this lovely heartfelt aspect was really nice. And I definitely could see Andrew's love of literature, like I said before. I loved the moments where you get to see Coley's, like, deeper parts, that sounded dirty. The deeper parts of his personality. Speaking of things sounding dirty, I did appreciate that there was a lot less talk about fluids in these steamy scenes. It's kind of been a running in joke between the author and I that there was so much mention of bodily fluids in the erotica series, and I think he lightly joked about it, my reaction to all the fluids, but there's significantly fewer this time around, which I preferred a lot more. As for the steamy scenes themselves, I don't want to say they're stock standard. This is an MLM romance, and we still live in a heteronormative hellscape. But they are standard for an MLM, at least for an MLM written by a man. And nothing too shocking. So if you have not done a lot with erotica or a lot with romance with sex scenes in it, you should be good to go. You should be fine. I really enjoyed them. Like I said, they're very cinematic, very vivid, very easy to imagine. He just has a way of describing things. And in general, it's just nice that I was proven right. Because I knew when I read that short story series in 2020, and I still can't believe it's been that long, I knew that Travis had a great novel in him, and I feel like I could probably say I told you so without sounding too bratty, because it's kind of like a compliment, right? Like I'm calling it a compliment. And it's very nice to be proven right that this book is as awesome as I was expecting it to be. So obviously, I gave this book 5 stars. Very much enjoyed it. If you are one of those people that has been participating in all the conversations about needing to read more books of MLM books by actual queer men, please add this to your list. This would be a great pick. It's just, it's so nice. I am technically still open, still a little bit more likely to say no, because, I accepted a lot of review books in a short period of time. But you will find all that information on how to send a review request down in the description below. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.